Hello, my name is Cyril Buranosky. I am a student at the University of Central Florida, and today I am going to be answering the question of whether or not authenticity matters in reconstructing the past. For me, this is a very challenging question as it has a wide range of implications with regards to the just and equitable advancement of peoples. Many times throughout history, minority groups, like the American Indians, have been portrayed as a primitive group of uneducated savages, whereas the white European settlers were presented as a more advanced and civilized society. This is an example of a storyline used in multiple movies, and, honestly, could not be further from the truth. In an article from Ferris State University, the writer says, throughout U.S. history, Euro-Americans have committed countless acts of violence against Native people. Such acts include extermination or genocide, theft of Indian lands and resources, captivity and enslavement, forced removals from homelands, and schooling aimed at destroying native cultures. To say that one's race or culture is more superior than another is not a formula to promote understanding, community, or the advancement of a just society. When we say it is important to portray the past as authentically as possible, we say that because it gives us a realistic view of history, and, in a way, that is what we should expect through the movies. Thanks to movies like 12 Years a Slave, 1917, Schindler's List, and Dunkirk, we, the audience, have been able to see authentic historical events play out on screen. History has always been a love and a passion of mine. I can remember spending countless hours poring over maps of Europe and mapping out the locations of World War II battles in the European theater. Nothing makes me happier than watching a history movie. I love seeing the historical figures and events played out on screen. From their period wear and the evacuation of Dunkirk in Christopher Nolan's film, Dunkirk, to the Civil War uniforms and battle sequences from Steven Spielberg's Lincoln. These are examples of what make a historical film authentic. And no matter how successful the movie is, it should always try to be as historically authentic as possible. An example of this attention to historical detail is seen in Ronald F. Maxwell's 1993 film, Gettysburg. From the outset, the producers and director worked to make the film as historically accurate as possible. They did this by shooting the film on location in Gettysburg itself. In a blog post from the National Museum of American History, written by Brian James Egan, one of the extras of the film, I have never had a more intimate experience with history as I did the day we filmed that scene on the actual battlefield. The scene he is referring to is Pickett's charge. He goes on to say, I was brought to tears, overwhelmed by the incalculation of the moment, location, and facile understanding of the historical event we were replicating. They also used thousands of Civil War reenactors for the film because the producers and director wanted to make a historically accurate film. It is no surprise that this film is included on IMDb's list of historically accurate films. There are, however, many examples of films that take certain liberties in their production. They just take events from other periods of history and portray them as fact. One such example can be seen in the film The Patriot. This is a film set during the American Revolution, or, if you are from England, the American War for Independence. There is one scene in particular that I wish to discuss: the famous church burning scene. In the scene, English Colonel William Tavington, portrayed by Jason Isaacs, orders Captain James Wilkins, portrayed by Adam Baldwin, to burn down a church that has been locked from the outside, with villagers still inside. Now, while Adam Baldwin's character is hesitant at first, he follows through and the citizens of the town are killed. This scene is wholly untrue. There is no evidence that the British did such a thing, as it would have gone against the Articles of War. While this scene is inaccurate, the filmmakers present it as actual fact. Interestingly enough, this scene was based on an event that occurred in the village of Oradour-sur-Glane during the Second World War. According to the Holocaust Encyclopedia, on June 10th, 1944, troops of the 2nd Waffen SS Panzer Division massacred 642 people, almost the entire population, and then destroyed the village. Another example of a historical inaccuracy in film is yet another Mel Gibson film, Braveheart. According to War History Online, this film is both one of the most celebrated and one of the most reviled pieces of historical filmmaking ever. One of the many scenes in question is that of the Battle of Stirling Bridge. In the film, this is a scene set in a field with no bridge in sight. The reason why this is such a big deal is because William Wallace and the Scots used the bridge as a bottleneck to defeat the English. Another historical inaccuracy in the film is the use of tartans. This cultural piece of clothing was not introduced until hundreds of years later. Fun fact, tartans were banned after the Battle of Culloden in 1746, which resulted in the failure of the Second Jacobite Rebellion. Another example that involves Disney Pictures is the 1995 film Pocahontas. Although it is a children's film, that doesn't mean it should be exempt from telling history correctly. In the film, there is an overwhelming sense of hostility toward the American Indians. This is just another example of Hollywood getting history wrong. According to the stunning historical inaccuracies of Pocahontas, the natives were kind to the colonists and brought them food and other supplies to help through the winter. Another example of the inaccuracy of Pocahontas is the meeting of Pocahontas and John Smith. In the film, they are presented as young adults, when, in reality, John Smith was 28 years old and Pocahontas was only 11. A downside of this is the children watching the film believe it to have actually happened. Some say that authenticity in a historical film doesn't matter. According to an article from The Conversation, film can only go so far, creating an absolutely accurate portrayal of the past. At the most basic level, historical accuracy is impossible due to the nature of film production realities, such as using actors, costumes, and sets to recreate the historical narrative. even if these achieve a consensus of accuracy among historians, these aesthetics only create an illusion of the past. Filmmakers must rework an episode from history to become a marketable narrative that will be attractive to audiences and provide a financial return for investors. In the definitive version of the DVD of Kingdom of Heaven, screenwriter William Monahan explained the need for writers to compromise history. You use what plays, or can be made to play, and you don't use what doesn't. This is an idea that I, as a lover of history and a history minor, disagree with wholeheartedly. The accurate portrayal of historical events is crucial. It was through the multiple hours of historical films, YouTube videos from channels such as The Armchair Historian, Oversimplified, and History Buffs, not to mention the many history teachers I have had over the years, that I came to appreciate a true account of history based on multiple perspectives. It is always important that all historical films be made in a historically accurate and thoughtful manner, as I believe the audience pays to see a historically accurate movie. In an article from Variety, the author states, "You are recreating something that a lot of people still remember. Researching everything and getting the details right to transport you back to that era is an ongoing part of the job." According to News.com, the author says, if history is the source of a series, they have an obligation to get it right. Is truth important? What is the impact of truth on history? If it is not remembered or presented properly, we are certainly doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past.